The night my mother introduced me as our daughter who helps with paperwork at a hospital, I was still wearing the watch the governor of Pennsylvania had given me 6 months earlier for helping coordinate emergency care after a school bus crash that sent 23 children to our trauma center. I could have corrected her. I didn't. I had spent 35 years learning that. Correcting my mother only gave her another reason to call me jealous of my younger brother. So I smiled, shook hands with my brother's future in-laws, and took the seat my mother had assigned me at the far end of the Thanksgiving table, half behind a floral centerpiece. Then the woman sitting across from me stopped mid-sentence and stared at my face. She was my brother's future mother-in-law, Dr. Katherine Monroe, chief nursing officer at one of the largest hospital systems in Pennsylvania. She looked at my name card, then at me, then back at my mother. "Wait," she said. "Rachel Morgan?" My mother's smile tightened. "Yes, our Rachel. She does administrative things at Mercy." Dr. Monroe's expression changed. "Administrative things?" She looked at me again. "You're the trauma nurse who ran pediatric triage during the Route 28 bus crash." The table went silent. My brother froze with his wineglass halfway to his mouth. His fiancée stared at him. My mother actually laughed. "Oh, Catherine, you know how hospitals exaggerate titles." Dr. Monroe did not laugh. "I was in the command center that night." Then she turned to my brother. "You told Lauren your sister couldn't come to the engagement photos because she was between jobs." My brother's face went white. That was when I realized the dinner was no longer about keeping my mother comfortable. It was about deciding whether I would lie one more time to protect the people who had spent my entire life pretending I was smaller than I was. My name is Rachel Morgan. I'm 35 years old, and I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm an emergency and trauma nurse at Allegheny Mercy Medical Center. I work 12-hour shifts, drink coffee that tastes like burnt cardboard, own more navy blue scrubs than actual clothes, and have learned that human beings can survive astonishing things when someone beside them refuses to panic. I did not learn that lesson from my parents. Growing up in Cranberry Township, I learned a very different lesson. In my family, love was not divided evenly. It was assigned according to who made my mother look good. My younger brother, Tyler, was 4 years behind me and had been born with the kind of personality adults adored. He smiled for photographs. He hugged relatives without being asked. He played baseball, told jokes at dinner, and somehow always knew when Mom wanted him to perform. I was quiet, serious, and terrible at pretending. I read during family parties. I hated matching Christmas sweaters. I asked why too often. The first time I understood that those differences mattered, I was 8 years old and standing in our hallway looking at the annual family Christmas card. My mother had arranged us in front of the fireplace. Dad stood behind her. Tyler sat on the hearth holding our dog. I was supposed to stand beside him. During the photo, Tyler had started making faces, and everyone laughed. I laughed too. When the cards arrived from the printer, I wasn't in the picture. My mother had cropped the photograph tighter. "You were blinking," she told me. I stared at the card. "But Tyler's eyes are closed too." She shrugged. "His expression is cute." There were 200 cards in boxes on our dining table. 200 copies of my family without me. I remember asking whether we could use another photo. Mom sighed like I had asked her to rebuild the house. "Rachel, why does everything have to become a crisis with you?" That sentence became one of the soundtracks of my childhood. Why does everything have to become a crisis with you? If Tyler interrupted me, I was making a crisis. If Mom forgot my school concert, I was making a crisis. If Dad promised to take me somewhere and then changed plans because Tyler had baseball, I was making a crisis. The original problem could disappear completely once I reacted to it. By middle school, I learned to react less. Silence became easier than being accused of ruining dinner. Tyler was not cruel to me. That is important. He was a child growing up in the same system I was. When we were little, he followed me everywhere. I taught him to ride a bicycle, helped with homework, and let him sleep on my bedroom floor during thunderstorms because he hated lightning. He adored me, but he also learned something I learned from the opposite side. Life was easier when Mom was pleased with him. He learned to accept praise without correcting exaggerations. If Mom told someone he was the best player on his team, he didn't mention that he usually sat fifth in the batting order. If she claimed he had been scouted by a high school coach, he didn't explain that the coach had simply talked to every parent after a summer tournament. Those little lies grew with him. They grew with all of us. My father, Daniel, rarely challenged my mother. He was a good man in the most frustrating way possible. Kind, hardworking, generous, and conflict avoidant, to the point of becoming useless when conflict mattered. He managed a plumbing supply warehouse and came home exhausted most evenings. When Mom and I fought, he would say, "You know how she gets." When Tyler was favored, he would say, "Your mother worries about him." When I asked why he never defended me, he would say, "I'm trying to keep the peace." I used to believe keeping the peace was something noble. It took me years to understand that peace purchased with one person's silence is not peace. It is submission with better branding. My mother, Elaine, cared deeply about appearances. We were not wealthy, but she wanted us to look polished. Our lawn was perfect. Christmas decorations were coordinated. Family photos had themes. She volunteered at church, chaired the parent association, brought casseroles when neighbors were sick, and remembered everybody's birthdays. People loved her. That made my private experience harder to explain. How could the woman who organized meal trains for widows make her own daughter feel invisible? How could the mother who spent 3 hours decorating cupcakes for Tyler's baseball team tell me she forgot the date of my science fair? The answer was simple and painful. People can be generous when generosity supports the version of themselves they enjoy. My achievements complicated my mother's story. Tyler's achievements decorated it. I became a strong student mostly because school made sense. In school, effort had predictable consequences. Study, improve, turn in work, receive a grade, ask a teacher a question, get an answer, instead of an accusation that I was being difficult. In 7th grade, I won a district science competition for a project on water contamination. My teacher called home because I qualified for the regional competition. That evening, Mom put the phone down and said, "That's nice." Then she asked if I could help decorate poster boards for Tyler's Little League fundraiser. I did. I was 13 and still thought usefulness might eventually turn into love. The regional science competition fell on the same Saturday as Tyler's baseball tournament. Dad promised he would come with me. Friday night, Mom said the tournament schedule had changed, and Tyler might play in the championship game. "Your father should be there." I looked at Dad. "You said you were coming with me." He stared at the television. "I know, honey." "Then come," Mom snapped. "Rachel, your brother has a team depending on him. My teacher is driving me alone." "You're old enough." "So is Tyler." Silence. Mom's eyes hardened. "You know, your jealousy of your brother is becoming ugly." I went to the competition with my teacher. I won 2nd place. When I came home, Tyler's team had lost in the semifinal. Mom spent dinner talking about how unfair the umpire had been. My medal stayed in my backpack for 3 days before Dad noticed it. That became the pattern. Every achievement I had lived in private. Straight A's. National Honor Society. Scholarship letters. Acceptance to the University of Pittsburgh. My mother's reactions were always oddly flat. "That's good, Rachel." Then immediately, "Did you hear Tyler got a summer job at the golf course?" When Tyler graduated high school with average grades and a scholarship to a small private college to play baseball, my mother threw a backyard party for 60 people. Banners. Catered food. A slideshow. She posted photographs for weeks. When I graduated from nursing school 2 years later with honors, she suggested we keep it simple because money had been tight. We ate dinner at Olive Garden. Tyler brought his girlfriend and spent half the meal talking about transferring colleges. I remember driving back to my apartment afterward in my graduation dress with my nursing pin in the passenger seat and thinking something I had been afraid to think my whole life. I could become extraordinary, and it still might not make my mother love me differently. That realization should have freed me. Instead, for years, it made me work harder. That is one of the strangest things about neglected children. We do not always stop seeking approval when the evidence says it will never come. Sometimes we simply raise the stakes. I became an emergency room nurse, then I earned trauma certification, then charge nurse, then trauma team coordinator. I volunteered for night shifts nobody wanted. I learned Spanish medical terminology because several families in our area struggled during emergencies. I completed graduate coursework in emergency management. None of that happened because of my mother, but some unhealthy part of me kept imagining the day she would finally tell someone, "My daughter saves lives." She never did. Instead, she created a simpler story. "Rachel works at the hospital." That was the line. Sometimes Rachel works in healthcare. Occasionally, Rachel helps doctors. Once, at a family wedding, I heard her tell my aunt I was basically doing paperwork now because nursing burned her out. I was overseeing the hospital's busiest trauma unit that year. I confronted her in the bathroom. "Why did you say I don't nurse anymore?" She applied lipstick in the mirror. "I didn't say that. You said I do paperwork because I burned out." "Well, don't you do charts?" I stared at her. "Everyone does charts." Then I wasn't lying. "You know exactly what you're doing." She put the lipstick away. "Rachel, normal people don't need their mother announcing their resume at weddings. You announce Tyler's resume. Tyler doesn't constantly need validation." The hypocrisy was so complete I almost admired it. Tyler had changed careers several times after college. He sold gym memberships, then insurance, then roofing, then eventually started working for a friend's luxury home renovation company. He was good with people and became a project consultant. Honest work. Good money when commissions were strong. But Mom transformed him into something else. Tyler runs projects for a major construction group. Tyler oversees luxury developments. Tyler is moving into executive management. The first time she called him a regional director in front of me, I nearly choked on my coffee. "Mom, he literally gave me his business card last week. It says project consultant." She glared. "Why do you always have to diminish him?" "I'm reading the card." Tyler laughed awkwardly. "It's okay, Rach." That sentence hurt more than Mom's anger. "It's okay." As though I had insulted him instead of correcting a lie. Over time, Tyler stopped correcting her too. That was where my frustration with him began. Not because he was favored. He did not create that when we were children. But adults become responsible for the advantages they knowingly accept. When somebody lies to make you bigger by making another person smaller, silence becomes participation. Tyler eventually became very comfortable participating. At Christmas, Mom would introduce him to neighbors as our son who runs high-end construction projects. He would smile. She would introduce me as our daughter who works at Mercy. I would smile too, because apparently that was our family's favorite holiday tradition. Social media made everything worse. My mother built an online museum, devoted almost entirely to Tyler. Photos of him standing beside renovated kitchens. Tyler at client events. Tyler holding a hammer even though I knew he didn't actually do construction labor. Captions like, "So proud of our hardworking son," or "Another beautiful project completed by Tyler and his team." There were also family photos in which I somehow rarely appeared. The Thanksgiving after I worked a 36-hour emergency stretch during a blizzard, Mom posted a picture from dinner captioned, "All my babies home." I had been there. She cropped me out because she said I looked tired. She left in Tyler's girlfriend's dog. That one almost broke me. I sat in my apartment looking at a golden retriever included in my mother's definition of all my babies, while my shoulder had been removed from the frame. I texted Tyler. "Do you ever notice I'm not in Mom's posts?" He responded with a laughing emoji and, "You know Mom, she likes good pictures." I stared at that message for an hour. "You know Mom." Another dangerous shrug. Years passed. I built a life in Pittsburgh that had nothing to do with my family's version of me. I had coworkers who knew exactly who I was. Friends who celebrated my promotions. Patients' families who sent cards months later. I lived in a two-bedroom townhouse near Highland Park and had a rescue cat named Olive who hated everyone equally. I dated, although nothing lasted long, partly because nursing schedules are terrible, partly because I had spent so much of my life learning to need little from people that intimacy felt like a foreign language. Therapy helped. A lot. My therapist once asked, "What would happen if your mother never became proud of you?" I hated the question. I don't know. Would your career become less valuable? No. Would you become less valuable? I knew the correct answer, saying it took much longer. Then came the school bus crash. It happened on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in March. A bus carrying middle school students collided with a delivery truck on Route 28. 23 children came through our emergency system. Several critical. News helicopters hovered over the hospital. Parents filled hallways. We activated disaster protocols. I spent 7 straight hours coordinating pediatric triage, moving teams, tracking identities, making sure children reached imaging and surgery, keeping terrified parents separated from the chaos without shutting them out entirely. I don't remember feeling heroic. I remember blood on my left shoe. I remember a 12-year-old girl asking me whether her little brother was alive. I remember one resident crying in a supply closet and then returning to work. I remember thinking we needed 3 more ventilators. That is what emergency medicine actually looks like. Not heroism. Tasks. Decisions. People doing the next right thing because there is no time to be dramatic. All 23 children survived. Some had long recoveries, but nobody died. The hospital later held a ceremony honoring the emergency teams. I received a state commendation, along with several physicians, paramedics, respiratory therapists, and nurses. The governor shook my hand. Newspapers used my photograph because I had become one of the public spokespeople after the event. Dr. Katherine Monroe, Chief Nursing Officer for the Pennsylvania Health Alliance, had been part of the regional command response. She sent me a handwritten note afterward. "Your calm leadership protected children and staff alike. Never underestimate the influence of composure under pressure." I kept the note in my desk. My mother knew about the ceremony. I sent her the live stream link. She did not watch it. She texted halfway through. "Tyler finally got that kitchen account he wanted. Huge day for both my kids." A kitchen renovation contract and a state emergency commendation had become equal because equality was the closest my mother could get to acknowledging me without threatening the hierarchy. I laughed when I read it. Then I cried in the employee bathroom where nobody could see. 6 months later, Tyler got engaged. His fiancée, Lauren Monroe, was a pediatric nurse practitioner in Indianapolis, whom he met at a friend's wedding. I liked her immediately. She was warm, intelligent, direct, and had the rare ability to listen without waiting for her turn to speak. The first time Tyler brought her to my mother's house, I was working and couldn't attend. Mom told Lauren that I did scheduling at a hospital in Pittsburgh. I didn't learn that until much later. Lauren's parents were impressive in ways that made my mother lose all normal judgment. Her father, Michael, had built a successful regional food distribution company and sold it before retiring. Her mother was Dr. Katherine Monroe, the same doctor, Monroe who had worked with our trauma response. My mother either did not know that or failed to connect the names. When Tyler announced the engagement, Mom immediately began treating the wedding like a merger between royal houses. She bought new furniture for the dining room, repainted the downstairs bathroom, ordered engraved napkins for an engagement dinner. She talked about Lauren's family constantly. Her father is very successful. Her mother is a hospital executive. These are sophisticated people. Sophisticated people. I started wondering what category she had assigned us. 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, Tyler called me. "Mom wants you here for dinner." That sounded enthusiastic. "Come on, Rach. What dinner?" "Lauren's parents are coming. Engagement thing." "Thanksgiving?" "Wednesday night before. Then they're staying for Thanksgiving too." "I'm scheduled Wednesday. Can't you switch?" I laughed. Trauma doesn't close for engagement dinners. Mom says it matters. "My job matters." Silence. Then he sighed. There it is. There what is. You always do this. Do what? Make everything about how important your job is. I went very still. I didn't bring up my job. You asked me to leave it. You know what I mean. No, Tyler. Actually, I don't. Mom is trying to make a good impression. And my absence ruins that? He hesitated. Honestly, Mom thinks it might be easier if you come, but don't get into all the trauma stuff. I laughed because I genuinely believed he was joking. He wasn't. Excuse me? Lauren's mom is high up in healthcare. Mom doesn't want you comparing jobs or making things weird. Comparing jobs? Rach. Her mother is a chief nursing officer. I'm a trauma nurse. That sounds like normal conversation. Mom says you can get intense. There it was. The family translation of competence. Intense. What exactly has she told Lauren about me? Long pause. Nothing bad. That's not an answer. She just said you work at Mercy. Doing what? Administrative coordination. I closed my eyes. Tyler, it's not a big deal. It is literally not my job. Why does the title matter so much? Why does lying about it matter so much to Mom? He got angry. You know what? This is exactly why she worries about inviting you. I almost hung up. Then some old damaged part of me took control. The part that had spent childhood staying quiet to avoid losing access to the family entirely. I'll switch shifts, Tyler exhaled. Thank you. But I'm not lying. Just don't make a point of correcting everything. That should have been where I said no. Instead, I traded my Wednesday night shift with another nurse, worked Tuesday, drove 3.5 hours to Cranberry Township Wednesday morning, and arrived at my parents' house before noon. Mom opened the door, looked me up and down, and said, "You wore black? Hello to you too. I thought you had that green dress. This is Thanksgiving dinner, not a campaign fundraiser." She sighed. Come inside. The house looked like a catalog. New runner on the table. White roses, candles, gold-rimmed glasses I had never seen before. Dad was carrying folding chairs from the basement. He gave me an awkward hug. Good to see you, kid. You too, Mom called from the dining room. Rachel, don't distract him. We're behind. I smiled at Dad. Nice to know some traditions survive. He looked guilty. Your mom's nervous. Of course she is. My place card was at the far end of the table beside Dad's cousin and a teenage nephew. Tyler and Lauren sat in the center opposite her parents. Mom and Dad flanked them. Why am I down here? I asked. Mom rearranged silverware. We're putting couples together. I'm beside a 16-year-old. Exactly. No awkward empty chair. I stared at her. Impressive recovery. She ignored that. Then she lowered her voice. One thing before they arrive. Here we go. Please don't talk about the accident. What accident? The bus thing. The bus thing. You know what I mean. It's upsetting. Lauren's mother manages hospitals. Exactly. She probably hears horrible stories all day. Tonight is supposed to be pleasant. Fine. And if she asks what you do, just say hospital operations. No. Mom stopped moving. Rachel. I am not hospital operations. You coordinate. Trauma care. Same family of work. No. Her eyes narrowed. Why do you need to make yourself sound more important? The question was so backwards, I almost became calm. I'm telling the truth. Your brother is trying to build a relationship with this family. What does my job have to do with his relationship? Nothing, if you don't turn it into something. Dad appeared in the doorway. Everything okay? Mom said. Rachel is already getting defensive. I laughed once. Dad looked at me with that old expression. Please, just let it go. Fine, I said. I won't bring it up. Mom smiled immediately. Thank you. Not I'm sorry. Thank you for agreeing to disappear correctly. Tyler arrived around 4 with Lauren. She hugged me before Mom could intercept. Rachel, finally. Finally? I've heard about you for months. I looked at Tyler. Have you? Lauren smiled. You work at Mercy, right? I do. What do you? Mom appeared with a tray. Rachel, could you put these in the kitchen? I almost admired the timing. Sure. Lauren looked confused. Tyler looked away. Half an hour later, her parents arrived. Katherine Monroe stepped through the door wearing a camel-colored coat, carrying a pie, and looking nothing like the executive headshot on the hospital system website. Michael Monroe followed with wine. Mom transformed instantly. Her voice became warmer, her laugh brighter. Dr. Monroe, welcome. We're so honored. Katherine smiled. Please call me Katherine. Mom laughed as though they had already become old friends. Of course, introductions began. Tyler received a glowing biography. Our son, Tyler, manages luxury renovation projects throughout the region. Tyler visibly swallowed. Lauren looked at him. He did not correct Mom. Dad was introduced as retired from management. Then me. And this is Rachel. She helps with administrative coordination at a hospital in Pittsburgh. I felt Katherine's eyes land on me. She paused. Rachel Morgan? Yes. Her eyebrows tightened slightly. Have we met? Mom answered. Oh, I doubt it. Rachel mostly works behind the scenes. Katherine continued looking at me. I knew she recognized the name but couldn't place it. Maybe, Lauren asked. What hospital again? Allegheny Mercy, I said. Katherine's expression changed by half a degree. Before she could respond, Mom clapped her hands. Let's get everyone drinks. Dinner began an hour later. For the first 20 minutes, everything went according to Mom's plan. Michael asked Tyler about his work. Mom answered half the questions for him. Tyler oversees major residential projects. He has contractors all over the region. They trust him with important clients. Lauren started looking uncomfortable. Tyler kept saying things like, well, sort of, and then letting the exaggeration survive. Katherine asked Dad about retirement, asked me whether I liked Pittsburgh. Every time the conversation approached my work, Mom redirected. Katherine noticed. Of course, she noticed. Women who run hospital systems notice patterns for a living. Rachel, how long have you been at Mercy? She asked. Almost 9 years. Mom immediately said, Tyler's been with Kensington Renovations for nearly 4. Katherine looked at Mom, then back at me. 9 years is a long time. What department? I opened my mouth. Mom said, she's moved around a lot. I stared at her. Katherine stared too. Have you? She asked me. Not exactly. Mom laughed. Rachel hates talking about work. That's how would be new, Tyler muttered. I looked at him. He immediately studied his plate. Katherine did not miss that either. Then, Lauren asked me about Pittsburgh restaurants. And for a while things relaxed. I began thinking maybe I could survive the evening. Then Michael raised his wine glass before dessert. I'd like to make a toast. Mom lit up. Everyone turned toward him. He spoke about Lauren and Tyler. Partnership, honesty, the courage to join families. Not simply 2 people. It was thoughtful and warm. Then Katherine stood beside him and added a few words. I spend my professional life watching people behave under pressure, she said. You learn quickly that titles matter less than character, and character shows itself most clearly when nobody thinks they're being evaluated. Mom nodded like she personally invented character. Katherine smiled at Lauren, then Tyler. I hope both of you build a marriage where the truth is never something you have to manage. Tyler's shoulders stiffened. Maybe he sensed what was coming before the rest of us. Katherine's eyes moved toward me. She stared for several seconds. Then she said, I'm sorry. This has been bothering me all night. Mom laughed nervously. What has? Katherine stepped closer to my end of the table. Rachel, were you at Allegheny Mercy during the Route 28 school bus response? My heartbeat changed. Yes. Katherine's face opened with recognition. I knew it. Mom cut in. Lots of staff were there. Katherine looked at her. I know. Then back at me. You coordinated pediatric trauma intake. No one moved. I nodded. I was the trauma charge that afternoon. Lauren's eyes widened. Wait, Katherine continued. You were the nurse on the statewide emergency briefing. For part of it. You received the governor's commendation. Mom laughed, actually laughed. They give those things to whole teams. Catherine's expression became flat. Yes. Teams deserve recognition. She paused. Rachel was specifically cited for leadership. Tyler looked at me. Lauren looked at Tyler. Dad stared at his plate. Mom said, Rachel doesn't like making a fuss. I felt something inside me finally snap into place. Not anger. Clarity. Actually, I said, I tried to tell you about the ceremony. Mom's face froze. Silence spread across the table. You sent me something, she said. A live stream. You were busy. I had things going on. Tyler closed a kitchen contract. Tyler whispered, Rach. I looked at him. What? Not now. Catherine's eyes sharpened. Lauren leaned back in her chair. Why not now? Nobody answered. Catherine looked at my mother. Elaine, why did you tell us Rachel did administrative work? Mom waved a hand. Hospital work is complicated. I simplify. You simplified a trauma nurse into an office assistant. That's dramatic. I almost laughed. There was the word. Lauren turned toward Tyler. You told me your sister was doing scheduling because she couldn't handle bedside nursing anymore. My stomach dropped. I looked at him. You said what? Tyler's face drained. That's what Mom said. And you repeated it. I didn't know the details. You've known what I do for 9 years. I knew you worked trauma, but I thought maybe you changed roles. Did you ask? He said nothing. Lauren stared at him. You showed me a family photo last Christmas and told me Rachel couldn't make it because she had personal stuff going on. I remembered that Christmas. I had worked the first half of the day, driven home through freezing rain, eaten dinner with them, and left before dessert because I had another shift at 7 the next morning. Mom's Instagram post had contained 11 photos. I was in none. I was there, I said. Lauren looked at me. What? I was at Christmas, Tyler whispered. Mom chose the pictures. And you let me believe your sister was absent. Mom slammed her napkin down. Why are we turning this into an interrogation? Catherine answered before I could. Because your stories keep changing. I was trying to keep dinner pleasant. By lying about your daughter? Mom's eyes filled. She always cried quickly when control started slipping. I have spent my whole life supporting both of my children. I felt something almost surreal listening to her. Really? Everyone looked at me. My voice was calm. Rachel, Dad warned softly. I looked at him. No, not this time. Mom stared. I continued. You want to talk about supporting both children? Let's talk, Tyler said. Can we please not destroy my engagement dinner? I turned toward him. This is exactly the problem. What? Everything becomes yours. My graduation couldn't matter because you had baseball. My nursing ceremony stayed small because money was tight, but your college graduation got 60 people in catering. Every story Mom tells about me gets reduced until I sound like I barely function, and every story about you gets inflated until you sound like you run a corporation. That isn't my fault. It wasn't when we were kids. He went silent. I continued. It is now. Lauren watched him. Catherine folded her hands. Mom snapped. Rachel has always competed with her brother. I competed with him? I laughed once. Mom, I was trying to compete for you. Her face changed. For once, the sentence got through. I spent half my childhood thinking if I achieved enough, maybe you'd talk about me the way you talked about him. Dad looked down. When I got into Pitt, you told everyone Tyler made varsity that week. When I graduated nursing school, you said we couldn't afford a party. When I became charge nurse, you told Aunt Denise I was still at the hospital. When I got recognized by the state, you texted me about Tyler's kitchen contract before the ceremony was over. Mom's tears became real now. I was proud of you. Privately, I don't know how to talk about hospital things. You don't have to understand trauma medicine to say your daughter is a nurse. I didn't want people thinking you saw horrible things all day, then say I help people survive them. Silence. Catherine looked at Mom, and the disappointment on her face seemed to hit harder than anything I could have said. Lauren turned toward Tyler. Did you know about the commendation? He rubbed his forehead. Yes. And you never told me? Why would I randomly bring up my sister's award? Lauren stared at him. Because you talk about your own sales awards from 3 years ago every time we pass the plaque in your apartment. Tyler flinched. Michael Monroe, who had barely spoken through the confrontation, finally leaned forward. Tyler, what exactly is your current position? Tyler looked at Mom. That one glance told everyone everything. Mom jumped in. He's essentially managing several projects. Michael held up one hand. I asked Tyler. Tyler swallowed. Senior project consultant. Lauren's expression changed. You told Dad you were regional project director. Mom calls it that. You put it on the wedding venue inquiry email. Silence. Tyler's face went red. It sounds more accurate to what I actually do, Michael asked. Do you supervise employees? Not directly. Do you approve budgets? No. Do project managers report to you? No. Michael sat back. Then it sounds less accurate. Mom's voice rose. This is ridiculous. Tyler works hard. Nobody said he doesn't, I said. That's the point. His real job is respectable. Why isn't reality enough in this family? Lauren stared at my brother. Why wasn't it enough for you? He looked shattered. I don't know. Mom said, because people judge. Katherine answered quietly. You judged first. Mom turned toward her. Katherine continued. You decided a trauma nurse didn't fit the image you wanted, so you shrank her. You decided your son's honest job wasn't impressive enough, so you enlarged it. You did not protect your children from judgment. You taught them that who they actually are is embarrassing. That sentence hit the entire table. My father covered his mouth with one hand. Tyler stared at nothing. Mom whispered, I only wanted people to be proud of them. Were you? Katherine asked. Mom opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Lauren began crying silently. Tyler reached for her hand. She pulled it away. Did you lie about anything else? No. Think before you answer. He looked at her. No. The house you said you were buying next year? Tyler's eyes closed. My mother said. They're planning. Lauren laughed through tears. We looked at one open house. We talked about buying. Talking is not buying. I wanted your parents to know I had plans. I knew you had plans. Lauren pushed back from the table. I didn't need you to be richer or more important. I needed you to be honest. Tyler stood too. Lauren, please. Sit down. He did. Her voice shook. You know what scares me? Not that your mother lies. Families are messy. People exaggerate. What scares me is watching you sit beside the lie because it benefits you. Tyler looked at me. I could almost see him realizing those were the words I had never been able to say clearly. Lauren continued. And when the lie hurts Rachel, you call it how Mom is. When the lie makes you look good, you let it stand. What happens when we're married? And your mother decides something about me? What happens when she tells people a story that makes our life look prettier? Do you correct her? Or do I become difficult too? I would defend you. You didn't defend your own sister. That ended him. He lowered his head. Mom started crying harder. This was supposed to be a beautiful night. I looked at her. It could have been. You just couldn't let one night be about Tyler. There it was. Even now, I felt 30 years collapse into one sentence. Mom, the night was about Tyler until your lie made me part of it. You could have stayed quiet. I did. Not enough. Something inside me went completely still. I stood. Thank you. Mom stared. For what? For finally saying it clearly. I pushed my chair back. I have spent my whole life wondering what amount of quiet would make you love me correctly. Now I know there isn't one, Dad whispered. Rachel. I looked at him. And you. His eyes filled immediately. I know. No, Dad. I don't think you do. Every time she erased me, you told me to keep the peace. Every time she favored Tyler, you told me not to be jealous. Every time I was hurt, you asked me to understand her. He nodded, tears slipping down his face. I was afraid of conflict. So you gave the conflict to me. He looked broken. I'm sorry. I believed him. That did not erase anything. Thank you. Tyler stood again. Rach, don't leave like this. I looked at him. Why? Because this is family. I laughed softly. Family is the word everyone uses when they want the person being hurt to stay in the room. Nobody answered. I picked up my coat from the back of the chair. Katherine stood. Rachel. I paused. I hope you know that nothing about your work tonight surprised me. I looked at her. She smiled slightly. The woman I watched during that emergency knew exactly who she was. Don't let this table convince her otherwise. My throat tightened. Thank you, then she added. And for what it's worth, your mother is wrong about hospital people not wanting to hear trauma stories. We complain about staffing for entertainment. That made me laugh. Even Lauren smiled through tears. I walked toward the front door. Mom followed me into the hallway. If you leave now, don't expect me to chase you. I turned. It was the kind of sentence that once would have terrified me. I'm not asking you to. Her face changed. So that's it? No. I put on my coat. That's the point. There doesn't have to be an it anymore. You don't get to threaten the relationship every time I set a boundary. I am your mother. Then act like one when there isn't an audience. She flinched. What do you want from me? For the first time in my life, I had an answer. Nothing tonight. I opened the door. That's what scares you, isn't it? I finally don't need you to approve of me. I left. I drove back to Pittsburgh that night instead of sleeping in my childhood bedroom. Snow started somewhere near Butler. I stopped at a rest area, bought coffee, and sat in the driver's seat, with both hands wrapped around the cup because they were shaking too badly to continue. I expected relief. What came first was grief. Enormous, humiliating grief. Because setting a boundary does not magically make you stop loving the people on the other side. I still wanted my mother to call and say the perfect thing. I still wanted Dad to somehow rewrite 30 years of silence. I still wanted Tyler to become the little boy who slept on my bedroom floor during thunderstorms instead of the man who had watched me disappear because my absence made his life easier. My phone contained 14 messages by midnight. Mom. I hope you're happy. Lauren left with her parents. Mom. Your brother's engagement may be over. Mom. This is exactly what I mean when I say you create crises. Mom. You always resented Tyler. Tyler. Why did you have to unload everything tonight? Tyler. Lauren won't answer me. Tyler. I know Mom lies sometimes, but you knew what tonight meant. Then 40 minutes later. I'm sorry. Ignore everything I just sent. Dad sent only one message. You should never have had to earn your place in this family. I am sorry I let you believe you did. I read that one 5 times. Lauren texted the next morning. I'm sorry you were put in that position. I did not end the engagement because you told the truth. I stepped back because the truth showed me something I need Tyler to address before I marry him. Please don't carry that. Katherine sent a shorter message. You handled yourself with more restraint than many executives I know. Get some rest. I laughed at that. Then I turned off my phone and slept 11 hours. The next month was ugly. Mom told relatives I had humiliated Tyler because I was jealous of his engagement. An aunt called and said, "Whatever your mother has done, family matters." I asked her whether she had heard what happened. She admitted she had only heard Mom's version. I said, "Then you are calling the wrong person." I stopped explaining. That was new. Old Rachel would have produced evidence. Dates, examples. A timeline. I would have tried to win a trial nobody had formally agreed to attend. Therapy had taught me another option. Let people believe what they choose when the cost of correcting them is your peace. Dad began calling once a week, not to defend Mom, not to ask me to apologize, just to talk. The first few conversations were painful. He apologized in circles. I eventually stopped him. Dad, I don't need another apology today. What do you need? I need you to stop saying you had no choice. Silence. I did have a choice, he said. I chose the easier person to disappoint. That sentence mattered. Yes. And it was always you, usually, because Tyler and your mother made noise. And I didn't, he cried. So did I. I taught you that being reasonable meant getting less. Yes. I'm sorry. That apology I kept. Tyler took longer. Lauren moved temporarily into her sister's apartment and postponed wedding planning. She did not publicly humiliate him. No social media posts, no dramatic announcements. She simply said she needed time. Tyler initially blamed me. Then, according to Dad, he spent several weeks blaming Mom. Then apparently a therapist asked him one very simple question. At what age did you realize your mother's lies benefited you? His answer was 14. That wrecked him. He called me 3 months after Thanksgiving. I almost didn't answer. Hey, he said. Hey. Long silence. I have something to say, and you don't have to respond. Okay. Mom made me the golden child. I said nothing. But I polished the trophy. That was the first thing he had ever said that made me believe he understood. He continued. I knew she exaggerated. I knew she minimized you. When we were kids, I didn't know what to do. When we got older, I liked it. His voice cracked. People thought I was more successful than I was. You were the difficult one, so I didn't have to be. If Mom was disappointed in you, she wasn't disappointed in me. I closed my eyes. I'm ashamed. You should be responsible, I said. Shame isn't very useful after that. He laughed sadly. That sounds like therapy. It is. I'm sorry I told Lauren you were between jobs. Why did you? He hesitated. Because she had seen one of your interviews online and said you seemed impressive. I felt. Another pause. Small. There it was. Not Mom this time. Him. So you made me smaller. Yeah. I did not rescue him from the ugliness of that truth. That was cruel. I know. And cowardly. I know. And you knew exactly what you were doing. I know. Silence. Then I said, thank you for not blaming Mom. He cried quietly. I'm trying not to anymore. We did not fix our relationship that day. But something honest began. Lauren eventually resumed seeing him, not wedding planning, dating. She required counseling. Boundaries with Mom. Truth about his job, finances, everything. Tyler accepted. Their original wedding date came and went. They spent that weekend hiking in West Virginia instead. 6 months later, Lauren called me. I think he's changing. Do you trust it? I trust the direction. That was a wise answer. Mom resisted every change. When Tyler corrected her in front of relatives, Mom, I'm not a director. Please stop saying that, she cried and accused him of humiliating her. When Dad stopped redirecting conversations away from me, she accused him of taking Rachel's side. When Dad drove to Pittsburgh to attend a hospital fundraiser where I received another nursing leadership award, Mom refused to come. Dad came anyway. That mattered more than the empty seat. Afterward, he stood beside me in the parking garage holding the program. My photograph was on the cover with 3 other nurses. I'm proud of you, he said. I almost replied with something sarcastic because vulnerability still frightened me. Instead, I said, thank you. He wiped his eyes. I should have said it more. Yes. I can't fix that. No. Can I do better now? I looked at him. Yes. That became enough. My mother and I went almost 7 months without speaking. I did not block her. I simply stopped participating in conversations that punished me. When she texted, your father spends more time talking about your hospital than Tyler's wedding plans, I did not respond. When she wrote, I hope you enjoy dividing the family, I did not respond. When she sent a photograph of the Thanksgiving table and said, this used to be a happy family, I deleted it. Then one Tuesday evening after a brutal shift, my phone rang. Mom. I almost ignored it. Something made me answer. Hello. She was quiet. I saw you on television. My stomach tightened. We had handled a warehouse explosion that week, and local news interviewed me about emergency preparedness. Okay. You were good. I sat on the edge of my bed. Thank you. Silence. A woman at church told me she recognized you. There it was. Of course there was an audience somewhere. I waited. Mom continued. She said I must be very proud. I laughed once without humor. What did you say? Long silence. I said I was. Are you? Another silence. I think I am. I closed my eyes. That's not the same as knowing. I know. Her voice became smaller. Rachel, I don't know why it was easier for me to be proud of Tyler. I could have answered. Therapy had given me theories. Personality, projection, gender expectations. My mother's own relationship with her mother. I chose not to diagnose her. You should figure that out. I'm trying. Are you? Your father says I need to talk to someone. He's right. She laughed faintly. You would say that. Yes. Then she surprised me. I'm sorry I told people you were burned out. My throat tightened. Thank you. I'm sorry I cropped you out of pictures. That one landed harder. You knew? Yes. Why? She started crying. Sometimes you looked unhappy. I was unhappy. I wanted the family to look happy. There it was, the truth beneath everything. So you removed the evidence. She cried harder. I suppose I did. I sat quietly. She continued. I thought if I kept everything looking right, maybe it would become right. Mom, people aren't decorations. I know, children especially. I know. For once, I believed she was beginning to. Our relationship did not become warm overnight. I did not suddenly start calling every Sunday. I did not forget. I did not turn the past into a heartwarming story about misunderstanding. Some damage remains, even after people change. That is not bitterness. It is consequence. But we began talking occasionally. Short calls. Neutral topics. She started therapy. I know because she complained constantly about how expensive it was, which seemed like evidence she was actually going. Dad moved the old family photographs around the living room. I found out when Tyler sent me a picture. There was the annual Christmas card photo from when I was 8, the uncropped original. I was standing beside Tyler with my eyes half closed, laughing. Dad had framed it. Beneath his text, he wrote, Your mother hates that her hair looks bad in this one. I told her that's why we're keeping it. I laughed until I cried. The following Thanksgiving, I did not go home. That was intentional. Mom asked, carefully, whether I would come. I said no. Why? She asked, but not accusingly. Because I'm working Wednesday, and I want Thanksgiving at my own place. With who? Old Rachel would have heard suspicion. Maybe it was there. I simply answered. Co-workers who can't travel. Dad is coming Saturday. Long silence. Okay. That one word showed more progress than a speech. My Thanksgiving table had 7 people. 2 nurses, 1 respiratory therapist, a medical resident, my neighbor, and a couple from work who had recently divorced and didn't want to choose which family holiday to ruin. We ate overcooked turkey and store-bought pie. Nobody had assigned seats. Nobody redirected conversations. Nobody needed to be impressive. Halfway through dinner, my coworker Sam raised his glass. To Rachel, who apparently saved all our schedules by taking Christmas Eve night shift. Everyone cheered. I laughed. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Happy Thanksgiving. I told Aunt Diane today that you run trauma nursing at Mercy. She said she already knew because she Googled you. Apparently everyone knows more about my daughter than I do. I'm working on that. I read it twice, then put my phone down and returned to dinner. That was important too. Healing does not mean every apology becomes the center of your day. Tyler and Lauren eventually married almost 2 years after the engagement dinner. Small wedding. 90 guests. At a renovated greenhouse outside Pittsburgh. My mother did not control the planning. She tried twice. Lauren shut it down. Tyler backed her up. I was not a bridesmaid because Lauren already had her sisters, and that was fine. I gave a reading during the ceremony because they asked me to. At the reception, Tyler took the microphone. My whole body tensed because family speeches had historically been dangerous territory. He said, Most people here know I have an older sister. He looked at me. Some of you also know I spent a long time letting other people tell the story of who she was, because that story made me feel more impressive. The room became quiet. Mom stared at him. He continued. Rachel is a trauma nurse, a leader, and one of the strongest people I know. She also taught me how to ride a bike, and once punched a kid in 6th grade for stealing my lunch. Laughter broke the tension. I'm not proud of every way I treated her, but I'm proud she's my sister. And I'm grateful she told the truth on a night when I was still too scared to. I cried. Completely. Ugly crying. Lauren handed me a napkin. After the speech, Mom approached me. I prepared myself. She simply said, "That was a good speech." It was. He loves you. I know. She nodded. Then, after a pause, I do too. My mother had said she loved me many times in my life. That was not new. What changed was that I no longer needed the sentence to prove anything. I love you too, I said, and I did. Loving someone and trusting them are separate skills. Loving someone and giving them unrestricted access are different decisions. Loving someone does not require agreeing to be diminished so they can remain comfortable. Those distinctions saved me. My mother still occasionally slips. She introduced me once as our daughter who practically runs the emergency department. I immediately said, I absolutely do not. Everyone laughed. Mom actually laughed too. Fine. She's a trauma nurse, and apparently titles matter. Truth matters. That too. Progress. Dad became more outspoken after retirement, which I found hilarious. 30 years of silence apparently accumulated interest. Mom once interrupted me at dinner and Dad said, Elaine, let Rachel finish. I almost dropped my fork. She glared at him. He kept eating. I texted Tyler under the table. Who is this man? Tyler responded. Therapy dad. Dangerous. We both nearly lost it. That kind of family humor felt different because nobody was the target. We were laughing at growth instead of hiding cruelty inside jokes. The strangest thing is that the engagement dinner did not destroy my family. The lies almost had. The dinner simply removed the curtains. Some relationships survived because people were willing to look at what they had done. Others changed shape permanently. I stopped attending every holiday out of obligation. I stopped answering guilt immediately. I stopped explaining my career to relatives who had spent years believing Mom's version. If they were curious, they could ask. If they preferred the old story, they were welcome to keep it. I no longer ran what I used to call the Christmas card test. I no longer searched Mom's social media to see whether I appeared. She actually posts me now. Sometimes too much. After one hospital award, she uploaded 11 photos and wrote a caption long enough to qualify as a memoir. I called and said, Mom, this is embarrassing. She replied, You complained for 30 years that I didn't post you. I wanted one photograph, not a documentary. She said, You're impossible to please. We both laughed. That moment would have been unthinkable once, because the sentence, You're impossible to please, used to mean something cruel. Now it was a joke because the underlying relationship had changed. That is something people misunderstand about boundaries. Boundaries do not automatically end relationships. Sometimes they are the first honest chance a relationship has. But they can only work if the other person accepts that access to you is not guaranteed. My mother changed because, eventually, she understood I really would leave the table. My father changed because he finally saw that silence was a decision. Tyler changed because the woman he loved showed him that benefiting from a lie still makes you part of it. And I changed because I stopped waiting for them to change before allowing myself to know my own worth. Last month, I visited my parents on a random Saturday. No holiday. No audience. Mom made chili. Dad complained about his back. Tyler and Lauren brought their baby daughter, Sophie. At one point, Sophie started crying while Mom was holding her. Mom bounced her and said, Oh, we're being dramatic tonight. The words hit my body before my mind could catch up. I went still. Mom noticed immediately. She stopped. No, she said quietly, looking at the baby. You're not dramatic. You're upset. Grandma's still learning. Nobody said anything for a moment. Then she looked at me. I could see shame in her face. I smiled a little. Good correction. She nodded. That tiny moment mattered more to me than the photographs, apologies, or public speeches. Because real change is not what people say once when they are afraid of losing you. It is what they catch themselves doing when nobody important is watching. Later, Dad and I stood on the porch while everyone else cleaned up. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah. Your mother caught herself." I noticed. "She talks about that stuff in therapy." "Good." Dad stared across the yard. "I used to think the worst thing that could happen to a family was conflict." I waited. Turns out, avoiding conflict nearly cost me my daughter. I looked at him. "It almost did. I'm glad you left that dinner. You hated it at the time." I was terrified. "Of Mom?" He laughed. "A little," then grew serious. "Mostly of everything breaking." I leaned against the railing. "Some things need to break." "Yeah. A lie, for example." He nodded. "A role." I thought about the invisible daughter, the difficult one, the jealous sister, the hospital office girl. All those versions of me other people had created because they were easier to manage than the truth. "Definitely a role." Dad put an arm around my shoulders. "I'm proud of you." I smiled. "I know. That was the difference. For most of my life, I needed him to say it because I could not generate that certainty inside myself. Now I could hear it as love instead of evidence. I still work trauma. I still hate hospital coffee. I still keep Katherine Monroe's handwritten note in my desk, although she is technically family now and sends much less inspirational messages these days. The last one said, "Tell your brother if he sends us another 5-minute video of the baby rolling over, I'm blocking him." Tyler is still a project consultant, a very good one. He eventually earned a promotion to account manager, and when Mom announced it, she used the correct title. We all congratulated her as much as him. Lauren says that was the family's true miracle. And my mother? She is not a completely different person. Nobody becomes somebody else because of one humiliating dinner. She still loves appearances. Still rearranges food before photographs. Still worries what people think more than I believe is healthy. But she no longer gets to purchase a beautiful picture with my disappearance. When she crosses a line, I say so. When she gets defensive, I end the conversation and try again later. Sometimes she apologizes quickly. Sometimes it takes a week. The crucial difference is that I no longer remain in the room while somebody convinces me my pain is proof that I am difficult. That lesson changed every relationship I have. At work, at home, with friends, with family. I used to think strength meant staying calm enough to tolerate anything. Trauma nursing taught me something else. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is recognize that a situation is unsafe and remove yourself before more damage occurs. We tell patients that constantly. If something hurts, pay attention. If you cannot breathe, say so. If a person becomes dangerous, create distance. Somehow families convince us those rules stop applying once blood is involved. They don't. The night Katherine Monroe recognized me at my mother's Thanksgiving table, everyone thought the revelation was that Rachel Morgan was not some failed office worker. That was not the real revelation. The real revelation was that I had spent decades allowing my family to decide whether my life counted based on whether they acknowledged it. A stranger recognizing me did not create my worth. The governor's commendation did not create it. My patience did not create it. My mother's eventual pride certainly did not create it. Those things only helped me see what had been there all along. The woman at that table had already survived every version of being minimized. She had built a career, a home, friendships, competence, compassion, and a life outside the family story. All she had left to do was stop asking permission to be visible. So here is the question I still think about, because people have surprisingly different answers. If your family spent years hiding your accomplishments, exaggerating your sibling's life, and asking you to stay quiet so the golden child could look better, would you expose the truth at an important family dinner, even if it might destroy an engagement, Or would you stay silent one more night to keep the peace?